is that once again, everything between 0 and 10K is just straight up fucking sales. And then you just got to focus on the delivery side of it. Once you get your first few deals and you exceed 10K a month, okay, this is when the game kind of changes. Because if you don't have a very tight set of parameters for like what you're not, like kind of bumpers in bowling, think of that. When you roll a ball down a bowling alley and it's got bumpers up, it's hard to go outside of the bumpers, like you just can't. You can throw it as hard as you want in most instances at the wall and it's just going to fucking bounce off even harder. But you have like a general direction you're forced to go. Between 10 and 50K, the biggest thing you'll fuck up is scaling the wrong model. Okay. So this is why I preach to you guys, like, don't get caught up in selling time and effort intensive shit. Because then you'll end up needing payroll positions, and then you'll end up going and trying to get clients solely to justify the fact that you hired payroll positions. Okay. Revenue driven services like advertising and consulting. That's all I sell. It's just advertising and consulting. To be clear, like Edward, to answer your question directly, like I still write copy for the ads. I'm still willing to write a landing page because it doesn't take us that much time. But I also have a copywriter in my team to support when it kind of overflows and when I need somebody else to do things while I'm busy doing other higher value shit. Okay. So point is, once again, between 10 and 50K, you'll either fuck something up and scale the wrong service. Okay. Or you'll scale with too many people and you'll realize that your profit margins are too low. And if you keep scaling it up the way you will, you're just ultimately going to run the wrong kind of business model. Usually between 10 and 50K, you either scale it up right and you just quickly move past that zone and you go into zone 3 once again, which is your path to 100K plus and beyond. If you fuck up going from 10 to 50K, you'll know because there'll be a lot of friction. You'll all of a sudden just experience like a lot of just unhealthy pressure. Like you won't feel like you're having fun. You'll just be working like 12, 15-hour days. You'll be like, fuck this. Like I fucked up clearly. And you'll have to kind of scale down. Like you'll have to fire people, fire clients, kind of like pull yourself back. It's contract to expand when you fuck up like that. So when you go through those periods between 10 and 50K, once again, it's usually like one key variable that you fucked up on, whether it's just selling the wrong service, hiring too many people, charging too little. It's usually one of the big 3 variables that you fuck up. But dude, if you scale it right, okay, the biggest thing that holds people back from making 100K plus and beyond is just charging right. Okay. Like you have to have minimums of things like 10K a month when you're getting to that level, because you should have more than enough results to feel extremely confident driving revenue for businesses at that point in the game. You might have like a few key staff in your team that are just talented, that do like multi-hat roles. So you're not having to hire a payroll position per responsibility. Like these people are fun. Like you enjoy the business, you're excited to scale it. Like that's when you're well on your way to getting past 100K a month. And your day, once again, to answer your question, like your days change like relative to each one of those phases, because 0 to 10K is just straight sales. 10 to 50K, you're definitely focused on client delivery. You're focused on client retention. You're probably moving into the phase of your business where you really got to get focused on systems and processes and like delegation and automation. And it makes sense because like, you transition to a point where you have more revenue coming in each month to justify, delegating and to justify like building systems, and to justify like taking the SOPs you get access to and implementing them in your business and maybe creating some of your own that are relative to you, 50K and beyond, like you actually get a lot of your time back, believe it or not. So it's a good thing you guys all need to adapt to mentally. It's really important. Okay. As you get richer, things get easier. For some reason, I think there's a lot of propaganda that says like more money, more problems. I mean, sure, there's more sophisticated problems, but they're all easier to solve because you got way more money and you can just deploy other people's time and effort onto your problems. So like, although they're your problems, they're really someone else's problems that you're going to pay to solve them. But like, they're still your problems and you still get the benefit of solving them, but other people solve them for you. So usually that's what happens. So actually, believe it or not, once again, like as you scale past 100K, if you scaled right, you should actually have more time available to you. And then it just becomes like focusing on the higher dollar value per hour actions, so it becomes like firing clients that are too low of a dollar value hour, because maybe even if you charge them 10K, maybe you're working like a crazy amount of hours for them and it just is well below what every other client manages to average. You fire those kind of clients. Like you're making bigger decisions, like bringing in talent, trying to get some better staff. Maybe you're also just like enjoying your life. You could enjoy it in multiple ways. There's tons of stuff you could do. It's also kind of where you get to transition into like the investor role. Like you got enough money coming in every month that you're either going to blow it on a bunch of bullshit just to kind of like spend your time doing, or you're going to like really get focused on the next level of just having a bunch of money, which is like, how can I invest all this? So it's what Dan talks about in the third part of his wealth triangle. Like actually, after you actually have like enough income and you have time again, Like you can apply the time however you want. You can just kind of chill for a couple months because you just probably worked your ass off for a couple years to get to that point, and then you go back into the investor game. But like, it's a pretty big difference once again. And the time that you can go through each one is really relative to two things: what you sell and how much you charge. You can go from 0 to 10K in one client. But a lot of people won't do that because they're just not confident enough right away to do it. They just don't feel they're worth that much. So therefore there's like a lack of internal worthiness that holds them back from charging enough. So even if you start off that way, that's fine. Cause like at least it gets you going, and although you're charging little, the speed in which you charge more dictates like how fast you move through these cycles, and the speed in which you charge more usually comes down to like how fast you're able to get client results, like how fast you're able to like adapt in your own internal mind about how you see yourself. Cause that ultimately is what enables you to charge more. I could look you dead in the face and say, dude, you're worthy. But if you don't feel worthy, it's like, you're not going to charge to a certain level. You know what I mean? So anyway, what I'm trying to get my point across to is like, yes, there's very different actions for each one of those phases, but also be clear, like you can move through those phases as fast as you want. The only one you really get caught up in is either by stopping your focus on sales between 0 and 10K. That holds people back for like years sometimes because they just don't stay focused on sales. The other window is that 10 to 50K level, which is like, I've seen students go from 0 to 10K in like a month or two because they just charge the right amount and they focus the hell on sales. Like it was one of the HTA students. I don't know their name. Maybe it's one of you guys on this call right now who's been focused like crazy on sales. Like he's updated us on like his 3 days going through the 30-day sales challenge. And each day I read and he's like, I hit my 100 today. I had like 2 sales calls. I'm pretty sure he got his first deal the other day within like the first 3 days of sending 100 video pitches a day, or just like communicating to 100 people every day. Some days he's exceeded that number. You know what I mean? So point I'm trying to make is like, once again, the amount of time you apply to sales gets you through the 0 to 10K, either in a short period of time or like a really long period of time, depending on how much you can invest time. The other side of it, once again, is 10 to 50K. You either scale up the right thing and you get to the next level easily, or you kind of fuck up, and then you got to descale to rescale the right way. But to be clear, like, you go through all this content inside of HTA, like you have a high probability of being able to go through that fluently. You just honestly have to have a pretty high amount of trust in the process that I've laid out for you here, knowing that it works extremely well. So that'd be the one thing I'd encourage you to do. Like all the content you guys have access to is like the direct path to fucking pull all that stuff off really easy rather than experience a lot of friction. So yeah, hope that answered your question, Edward. Wasn't trying to over-explain it. Anyway, all right, Vincent, is this being recorded? Don't see the recording sign. Yeah, it was, Vincent. Thank you for that. I read your message and I pressed record. So yeah, good. We missed the first like maybe 5 minutes though. Kyle said, I know there's some solid questions out there. Drop them below. Yeah, we see a few here. Caitlin asks, is there a way you qualify prospects before you go into really focusing your time and effort on that prospect? Like, for example, whether they have the funds, et cetera. Yeah, good question, Caitlin. So, some of the ways that we filter for our perfect client traits before we've even talked to somebody, we like to look at the quality of the assets that they have. Like we can indicate pretty strongly if somebody has a small team and they're already in motion and probably making some good money based on the quality of how they represent themselves online. Like if they got good websites, if they're well built, like if they're at least updated with current marketing trends and tactics and strategies, like if you see them using funnels, if you look them up in the Facebook ad library and they don't just have like shitty ads, they have good ads, or they're running ads at all, those are things that indicate to you like whether this person likely has funds or not. In addition to that, the content on their social media, that can be a big one. I like to look for what I call star power. Dan told me this one time, believe it or not. I've learned a lot from Dan. There's no more powerful lesson that helped my business directly. I was like, Dan, some people, they have all the right stuff, but they just suck at like the video part, they're very like credible people, but they just come off like highly inauthentic, or like they just come off like awkward or weird. And he's like, they're missing star power, Jeremy. And it hit me really hard. I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, think about it, Jeremy. He's like, people like you and I, he's like, how long did it take you to start like talking like this? I was like, I've always been told from a young age I was persuasive, I always did a good job of presenting. I wasn't always like this, like I had some uhs or ands in there and stuff like that. But the point is, overall, it's like you're relatively start off with like a decent amount of star power, and you can see like in the way people communicate through their ads, whether it's them as like a person. There's a lot of service-based businesses out there where like you can just tell once again from content. If it comes off like authentic, credible, and a good quality, there's a high indicator there for us anyway in my agency that like this is going to be a good deal, So once again, like we want to feel that they're already in motion. Okay. I see a lot of agency owners get caught in this game where they help people get in motion. And for me, there's just way too much friction in that game to want to play it. You know, I like playing the game where people are already in motion because it's that much easier to accelerate something that's already in motion. It's harder to move something that's not moving. You know what I mean? So we look for those. Long story short, like if they're already running ads, they already got some funnels, they already got some good content, good sign they're already in motion. You know, if they have shitty content, they're not running ads. You know, their funnels look like they're from 19